Exactly. And he already told you that it's all fake. So again, now we're going to prove again this is Morocco. Some people believe that America name stems from the mountain range along the Amaric, located in Nicaragua. Others believe that it stems from the word common to the several American languages of the Caribbean, South America, namely Maraca, pronounced Maraca or Maraca or Ambraca, which this word meaning rattle or ground, right? That's why maracas are those shaking things, right? Is found as a place name for Venezuela, Maracapana, Maracay, Maracaibo, Trinidad, Maracas, Puerto Rico, Maracayu, Brazil, Maraca, Itamaraca, and elsewhere. Many very early maps of the Caribbean region show an island located in northeast Venezuela, which Nicaragua is actually located, called Tamarake. Tamarake. So again, Tamarake, Tamare, Tamarak, right? That's right here in America, which has interpreted as T Amarak or the Amarak, standing for tiara or terra land. All this before America first appeared as a name for the mainland, roughly in the area of Venezuela, which at the time was also Grenada. You understand? So we are ancient Moroccans. That's why I told you that Morocco is spelled with an A and not an O, right? That's why the country code for Morocco is MA, not MO. MO is Montana, which again is Old Morocco or Old Morocco. You see what I'm saying? See how they flip it? Again, making us distinct. So when we talk about Carthage, right? Carthage was right here in America, in the Americas. Excuse me, here it is. Here we go. That's Cartagena, right? All on the 33rd parallel, right? Where we put all of the empires at, right? The kingdoms. There it is. There's also a Carthage in South Carolina. There's also a Carthage in Idaho, I believe. Marocco. Maracaibo, see? Right there. Meridia, Pamplona, right? Medellin, all of this. The empire, right here. Carthage, Phoenicia, proven is right here. Get this book. America BC, but it says what? Tribes and languages of what? Asiatic origins. The Micmac hieroglyphs and what we call Burroughs Cave and all of that. Or the Montaka, the Algonquins, the Iroquois, Zuni, Pima, Anasazi. All directly connected to who? The Iberian, Libyan, ancient so-called Egyptian. And then by way of the ancient Basque and Celtic, tying up the international trade route to the empire. And here's Grenada in South America on your left, and what they now today call Mexico. They go to towns, the Pueblo, when they talk about the Pueblo cultures, those were all Moorish cultures. Don't let them fool you. We already showed and proved that the Indian came from the Moor as a misnomer. Look, the protective armies of Pueblo, according to the treaties found in the Article 8 of the Indian Manifesto, March 11, 1972. Look, Moorish array of posts protecting the Pueblos, Moorish country flag. So wherever you see these things at is where we was posted at around the city. And the city itself, you see, is built on a star fort. So these battles, these fights, and what's happening, and these people are starting to realize that the only way really out is the nationality. That's the way in, because that's what they're lacking when it comes to that. Because anything else is Jesuit influence. You understand? Anything that's not Moorish science is Jesuit. Like that's how you got to look at it at this point. It's all Jesuit stuff, especially if it's dealing with some sort of ritualistic aspect. Not ritualistic to the point that you're not benefiting from it. If it becomes routine, if it just becomes something like that, then that means you've lost the remembrance, because remembrance of Allah is worth more than prayer. So learning more about yourself while you're incorporating those rituals and having your family and stuff a part of it is what makes it real. So all these Indian people that's hating on black people and all that, that's because it's from the book Consecrated Talismans. All of them fell under the Mahajapandas, which means the great realms, which became the kingdoms of Madagaha and the Chandragupta Mauryan dynasties that led to all of the dynasties that eventually led to what you would know, I know it today as elements that degenerated from it called the Thuggee, like what you've seen in the Indiana Jones joint. Those were the ones rebelling, trying to put this type of stuff, these Moors back in control, but got caught up with the British Satanists and helped bridge the gap to all of those Indians that sold their people out to become billionaires and doing all the stuff they're doing now to help keep the caste system going. Because prior to the British, the caste system as they know it today didn't exist. So one of the greatest emperors that you read about in these ancient times was Asoka. And like I said, the Asoka dynasty, the Chandragupta, the Mauryan, these are the ones that laid the foundation of what we today call the ancient ones. And these were all the descendants of the Moabite peoples and their Canaanite, Hamathite, Hittite, Amorite, Adite, Damodite brethren who inhabited the lands long before the continental drift. These are the Asiatics that are in our blood today, which is why they need our blood, like I showed you, to be able to do what they're doing. Remember, we read in the temple, on the wall of the temple that they found in South America, that they found all of the ancient languages, because all of these cultures were part of the same dynasty. They just operated along their culture, their customary lines, right? So one of them, we read about, this is an excerpt from that book. We'll read about, came from the mosque they found out there. Oldest mosque in America is the one in Nevada, second to the Alamo, built by the Almohad dynasty. Okay. Let me see. Yeah, so all them pictures they be showing us, all that stuff be fake. Or it be brought out of context and then they just put the story on it. You get a Negro to validate it, went to one of their schools. The oldest map of North America. This map in Nevada, see, I missed the top. This map in Nevada of North America. This map in Nevada is according to the author an Arabic copy, inscribed by the Trans-Pacific settlers on a rock circa 800 AD. Copy from the copied from a Libyan original drawing from the 1st century BC. The map marked partly in ancient Libyan script and partly in Arabic. The Libyan script indicates the island of Hawa, or Awa, is the Arabic for wind, and the fact that the northeast is North Passage, and in the center of the continent is the word Mr, the Libyan word meaning land on the other side of the sea, which is called a moor, right? When you dock a ship to something, it's called mooring the ship, right? And possibly the origin of the word America. See? Mr, meaning more. So we just showed where Morocco and Morocco come from, and Moroccan come from, but now we're saying that the word America is actually deriving from the root word Mr, which may explain why America, the root word Mr in America is the same as the root in Morocco, which is MRC, right? The ocean of storms, may God preserve us. The map remarkably was showing both sides of Hudson Bay and the Panamanian Isthmus, meaning the canal was already there. Look at them old maps, what they call, you'll see that there's a thing with it, it's already there. Just like you don't see any maps in China of the Great Wall until the 16th century. So how they explain that? Maybe the same way we explained Stonehenge when I showed y'all how they set that up. So all that stuff over there, again, is over here. They got us bugging, and now everybody feels that. So when you're talking about Libya, ancient Libya is over here, Nevada, and all of that. And the ancient Libyan script, or the state of Libya, didn't come into effect until the 1950s. Remember? So what we see is a pattern of ancient places being already there, and then years later being forgotten, and in different places being named adjacent to them. What we also see is, one second. Where's that? Where's that? All of the capitulating factors to this being attributed to the missing history that we again have been deprived of due to our collective amnesia and those in our community who have sworn to never tell us, and through that receive, pats on the head and little trinkets. So now that all of that's crumbling, those of us that have been already educated in the proper dialectum have what we need now to usher in what we should, which is proper education and the ability now to stand on the republic side of things, which then would enforce whatever we need to happen and see happen for our empire. Our empire is our children. Understand? So collectively having a customary way of living then automatically protects them from any unseen Negrodom. And especially now with the enhancement of the police, we now have the ability to actively police our own selves due to the rampant murder that goes along with being around them, and be justified in doing so. They don't have to worry about none of that. So we've also found again and shown and proved that not only was Carthage here, which explains why Hanno was able to move up so far into the American continent and do what he did. And we also have verification that what they call the Red Sea is actually over here in the western portion of the United States, and what they call the Gulf of California. right? Which we know is Old Khalifa, Old Mexico, and Old what you call it. But this was directly connected to Tartary through the invasion of Genghis that came in the 13th century that brought the Siberian Mongols, the wild Siberian Mongols, who today call themselves Native American, who mated with the Appalachian wild Caucasians that we had already domesticated during the years of under what they call the Dark Ages, Dark Ages, and then created the castrato system and all of that to keep their numbers low. And so when you read Black Asians from various dynasties, the Chow, the Shang, and many others migrated from Asia thousands of years ago to the regions of what we now today know as North, Central, and South America. These Black Asians mixed with the Black natives who were already occupying these lands. And this explains how some natives of indigenous peoples of the Western Hemisphere, aka Indians, have high cheekbones and slanted eyes. This also is the image of the native of the Western Hemispheres and have been widely promoted. Other natives who do not possess the features were carved out of history. This to promote the natives that would look like the ones from the colonizer. See? So again, showing and proving that we as Asiatics existed in a state of pre-Africanness. How? Because we can prove it through the scientific phylogenetic view of the out of Asia, Eurasia, out of Africa hypothesis in the light of the recent molecular and paleontological finds. So on your DNA report, when it comes back sub-Saharan African DNA, they really not talking about you being from Africa, they talking about your DNA coming either above or below the so-called Sahara in Africa, using that as a model along the 33rd parallel, which then ties Carthage and the Phoenicians and the Moroccans and all of these people into one empire, which is why we as Asiatics were right exactly when we said so, which we'll read in a second. I just want to also show you this. This explains also the difference in Islam that was practiced by the original adherents who were the Tamaracans, or Tamarayans, i.e. the Moors, high priests of Anu, who existed in the western portion of Africa and had been doing so since the fall of Alexandria. Meanwhile, the Arabs, or what we call the Arabs, who started off as dark-skinned Moors and all of that, basically pregenitorized themselves by interbreeding and through consanguinity created the so-called version of the so-called Arab today. And then 250 years after the fall of Islam, after 1492, they then started to set out to set up their own aspect of that by enslaving those Moors to their version of Islam, and to further dilute the original Asiatic blood to cut off their connection with us over here. The substantial and out of Africa hypothesis was addressed in the light of recent genomic analysis of the extent of humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, and the progress of the Neanderthal paleontology, meaning that we are totally different than everybody else. The examination lent no support to the commonly assumed out of Africa scenario, but favored instead a Eurasian divergence between all other parts of the world were colonized by the Homo sapiens sapiens from Asia. And this is when the whole world was connected, right? So really we're talking about one people that just went out from different places. And the expansion, the examination suggested furthermore that the ancestors of the extant Khoisan and Mbuti compared to the first Homo sapiens sapiens into Africa, that they are the ancestors of the Yoruba, made up of the later wave of the same continent. Because the Yorubans is at the top, they were at the bottom. And then all of the so-called traditional Africans was in the middle. See what I'm saying? Which means that they were more connected to the Moorish Empire, because remember, Africa is a Latin word named by the Moors to define the region under Carthaginian control. So it's not really a place, it was more a designation. And so analyze that haplogroup to its see how far it went and why it was definitely possible for Genghis and the rest of the people to come over here and do what they did. Understand? So when we say, so when Elijah Muhammad used the term the original Asiatic black man, right? He is giving you an anagram for the word Moab. O meaning original, A meaning Asiatic, man being M, and B meaning black. So those of us who have chosen to ignore this aspect of our DNA, you see, are the ones that fall victim and are usually preyed upon and then are used to now come against us who have already accepted who and what we are. So again, the Moors and the Islam in Western Africa was different up until they CIA initiated the Boko Haram and the rest of these crazy people that's out there doing what they're doing. Just like Britain, the king of Britain was a Moor under and with the Moorish Empire, but due to the people in his community that was trying to now involve themselves in the rising draconian states through this dude and his family. This guy, head of the House of Anjou, basically came over here through the French house, and his great great grandson, the de Maison de Rouge, married into the French house and laid the groundwork for what we today call Louisiana. And those dark practices then got taken and evolved into the hoodoo culture, you see, that exists and permeates Louisiana and all that today. The zombies and all of that, and the vampires and all of that, like what you see in the Anne Rice books and all that. That was what the aristocracy in Louisiana and them was dealing with, because they were all part of the Draconian Society, Society of the Green Dragon or the Black Dragon, which again was a low-key Jesuit society dedicated to attaining power through satanic ritual, or what they at the time would refer to as Necronomicon. The Necronomicon in history was created by a Moor, who they call Agahazred, who eventually went mad and eventually they say was consumed in a public square years after writing it. But there's not one necessary Necronomicon book. There's a bunch of them in which Crowley and these people, these Thelemites, these liberals, do these satanic rituals and theater blood plays that play out today, and is all enhanced by the Freemasonic culture given to us as reality. You understand? That's what's really going on. So these rebellions that we see happening is half rebellion, half theater. We should just be thankful that people see that it's actually more theater. I mean, that the parts of it that's theater is actually being seen also by the people as well. So that means now they looking even more crazy. You know what I'm saying? Since when you know they come up with the autopsy that quick on any dead black man by the pig? Nobody. They come back now say he guilty, so they setting him up to get released. You know what I'm saying? While at the same time using women and white women and these people as constant uh, what you call it, to promote, actually one of us. They trying to really blend in. They trying to really become us. And then the other side of them hate us. You know what I'm saying? But it's all still theater. White people trying to call themselves eels and bays with no real connection to no real eel or bay that actually did it. Getting passes by sympathetic amalgamated Moors and these other people that don't even have no real connection to no real Moors that can make sure that these people have been vetted and at least given some sort of fealty mandate to be able to resurrect they and hold them accountable during their time of what do you call it, observation. Like there's customs for Moors and what they're supposed to do with that. But when you see stuff like this, you know what I'm saying? You know, it's some ritual, whatever going on. Because all of these guys, again, are Freemasons. That's why they're in the public eye, and you can't trust them. Not because all Freemasons are evil, but because in essence, you're still brotherhood. You're still brothers with the cop that killed this dude if you wear an apron. Period. And if this dude, God forbid, is not dead, and it does turn out to be a hoax like everything else, like why wouldn't it be? You know what I'm saying? But police brutality itself is real. But when we really look at the origins of where all of this is coming from, it's all coming from our forefathers putting work in to the point that in trying to look out for the entire empire, we lost the individual states. But for the two considerations, one might all, whether European or African, can find shelter in the fold of sin and dangerous and unbelief, when once it would be wrong, of course, to endanger the backsliding by emancipation. But for two considerations, I might suppose that colonial slavery originated in Muslim law, because it was a law to keep the devil bound. It was the law not to allow women and children to be murdered or eaten. It was the law not to have children molested and killed and all of that. Way longer than it wasn't. And so now that they're backsliding into this system, we have to understand that they're coming from a closing out of a three-pronged system. As we close out, hopefully you can see it. Yeah. Yeah, there were three constitutions drawn up. The National Constitution, which was the Constitution for the United States of America, which was 1787. Then you had the Territorial Constitution, which was the Constitution of the United States of America of 1789. Then the Municipal Constitution of the Municipal Constitution for the United States in 1790 to 1791. And the United States then became an article to then subsequently execute whatever deals it needed to do on behalf of the American people. But what the United States government did by 1871 was create citizens for itself by remaking the original citizens that they acquired through taking. Yeah, because all these guys are agents, man. How is it always the people who's the most so-called Caucasian people, Caucasian looking, phenotypically the ones that's doing the most speaking up, while all the dark-skinned original people in the street get murdered? You gotta switch all that. You gotta go back to the real, what's really important, getting the ills and Beys back to their wills and ways. And the way to do that, again, is to unify both of those houses, which is really the unification of the higher self and the lower self, and then start working on some Morocco mold type thing. Acquiring, establishing, acquiring, reclaiming. While everything is being, when they say, what do the Romans say? When there's blood in the streets, buy property, right? This is the best time everybody should be going in, because that's what the white people doing right now. You have a collective temple, you have a trust, you have this. If you guys collectively can nominate how much you want to attribute or pledge from your trust to do so, you guys can do that. Give that to the treasury along the right parameters to be paid out for the right of the emancipation and the upliftment of the fallen humanity and all that. But you have to have a structured trust and a structured identity under the non-U.S. citizen national American nationality to do so. Because that American nationality is the couch for your Moorish American heritage. Filing suits is easy. You just basically file it and then put it in there. And they are so used to not doing nothing, they gonna let it go in the default. And that's when you get them. So again, what we should establish is that when we talk about originally European, we talk about Moors. We're talking about Asiatic people originally. We brought with them their Caucasian slaves and servants, who they called pilgrims and Puritans and all that, because they were all being persecuted and they didn't like what James was dealing with due to the conversion of the Bible that they believed came from somewhere else. Because it did. It was the translation of what was left over from Granada that they was basically putting in, which is really the story about us over here. So he wanted to, or they wanted to translate it in a way that we could use it, but where the European version of what we naturally were was now idealized. And so this, in a way, gave them the ability to marry into the families and then bring their type of law over our own. So this here is the Maronite and his white concubine slave that they would have babies with, and then those babies, if not put into good standing, would then be put in charge of the Mamelukes, the whites. Remember, Benjamin Franklin said the Palatine Moors. The original thing says Moors, but then there's another translation that says Boers. But either way, they're talking about the Moors. We suffered from to swarm into our settlements. They will never adopt our customs any more than they can obtain our complexion. All of Africa, Asia, and America are swarthy black. Russia, Italy, Spain, France, Swedes, the Germans are black. The principal whites are made up of the Saxons and English. The Scots, Welsh, and Irish are not Saxon and English, which means they're black. Benjamin Franklin writes this in an essay in 1751. The German King George of the House of Hanover, George II, is now sitting on the throne of England. That's why they want to turn the matriarchy into a patriarchy now and bring John in, because Britain is on its own, so it needs a king. But they can't put no fake king up in there, so they're going to try to get William to be coronated, I think, and change his name to John. The outcome is already done as well, meaning that they've already been exposed. So what we just have to do is keep our heads and not get caught up in the excessive amount of fluid information that's going to come in. Like they're going to bring up the porn star thing. They're going to show the tape. Pornhub's going to make a lot of money from that. You know, they're going to do their thing as well. It's all now going straight to going through all of the files and basically wrapping up everything against Obama because of the Flynn thing. So now that the Flynn thing is gone, it's going to be pretty much a wrap. It's open secret for everybody. So the mysterious disappearance of Hanks and the rest of these guys is all basically the next phase of it after the election. So all we got to do is basically get whatever paperwork and things we need to get straight until then, and then move along that design. You know what I'm saying? Speaking of giants, see here. More. See the giant more. Exactly. Yeah, and due to the rise of this type of intelligence, has put a lot of great researchers out there. People I don't even know. I just be looking at one thing and then I'll just go into the image section of Google and it just be all of this stuff. Like, oh yeah, that's exactly what it is. So the cross that you see Jesus put on is actually the white Caesar Borgia, or the white Christ that was put on the cross of the four corners of the world, being that he was the global slave. And through his blood, they rose up to crush us. So this is also the cross of Tammuz, the original Coptic cross, or the cross that the Pope has, but they flipped it and put a black man on it now. That's why they all have to go. So again, Texas is Texas, or Texas, or Tejas, but it's the same. It's ancient Egypt, ancient Mauritania, ancient Andalusia, ancient Granada. All right? So anybody wants to hit me up about anything else or whatever, just do so at houseofl@hotmail.com, and then we'll take it from there. Islam. I think so. Peace.